Okay, we do have, since this is a new module, got a brand new document. Please download that. Open Cami again. Drag and drop. You won't have that because it's the first time you're opening it. Okay, and there are our notes. Now, there's no Pear Deck for you to do or anything like that, so just hang tight for a second. I'll get the presentation on the screen. Okay, contract law. As I know I told you at the beginning of this course, some of you were hoping for some of the exciting elements of law, and you were frequently going to feel disappointed. This may be one of those cases, but, and I know it does not sound exciting from the get-go, contract law is one of the most useful things you can pick up in a class like this. It is one of the things I'm most excited to get to teach you about, partly because of how I've been able to use it at unexpected times in my own life. I used it to battle the Johnson County Transit Authority when they tried to screw me out of a bunch of money in bus passes. I used it against a landlord who was kind of crooked and trying to get me to pay to replace all of the carpet in my apartment when I had not ruined it. In all of these cases, I was able to get most of what I wanted in the case of the fight with Johnson County Transit Authority, and if I'd been a little less lazy, I probably could have gotten more. And with my landlord, I got complete satisfaction, got my deposit back, and did not have to replace the carpet. And in both those cases, all I did was refer to breach of contract, right? And give them enough sense that I knew what I was talking about to give them doubts about fighting me in court over it. Right? So contract law, not exciting, but very useful. Right? With that and just a little bit of a poker face and some bluster, you can get a lot of things in life. All right, so on to the contract law. Right, the basics. All right, contracts are really pretty simple things. They are, first and foremost, an agreement. An agreement that involves an exchange. And that has to involve two or more persons. Right? And if you're wondering, well, why doesn't he say people? In law, when we refer to more than one person, we use the term persons instead of people. Right? I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I don't know what it is exactly, but just understand that we will use the term persons. And this is an exchange that becomes legally binding. We'll talk about the elements that make it legally binding as we go. So those elements. One, and the elements here are what make this a very specific thing. Otherwise, a lot of things can involve these elements without being a contract. In this case, we have to have a specific offer. Schuyler has to specifically offer, for example, as we see here, to sell a car to Sanaya for some price. Sanaya would then have to accept that specific offer. And then there would have to be an exchange of consideration from both sides. And what that is, Schuyler, his consideration is the car. Sanaya's consideration is the money. When Sanaya gives Schuyler the money, Schuyler gives Sanaya the car, and we have a contract that has been fulfilled. The final element that is required is competence. Both sides have to be competent. That does not mean both sides need to be like Stephen Hawking level smart in order to make the contract work. What it does have to mean is that both people are mentally sound and not impaired. So if Skylar is, maybe Skylar, I don't know, Skylar, what would be, well, actually we won't put this at Skylar, we'll just pick for him. Skylar decided to try some mushrooms, some of those supposedly magic mushrooms, and he's not really there. He's feeling pretty good, but he is not of sound mind, right? And he offers to sell his car to Sanaya, right, for a cheeseburger. And I don't know, do magic mushrooms make people hungry? Do they also give people munchies? I don't know. There's a boring, not exciting guy.
I feel like we shouldn't answer that.
Okay. But you guys have taken a health class, and if I've learned anything about health classes, they always teach you about all of the latest drugs. Yeah. So, all right, let's just assume they make you hungry. All right, and so Skylar is willing to sell his car to Sanaya for a cheeseburger. And he has made a specific offer. Sanaya has a cheeseburger, right? It's not even a particularly good cheeseburger, right? But she's got a cheeseburger, and Skylar says, I'll give you my car for a cheeseburger, right? And Sanaya accepts that offer. Sanaya gives Skylar a cheeseburger. Skylar gives Sanaya the car and a signed title, and contract should be good. But the next day, or however long it takes for those magic mushrooms to wear off, Skylar realizes that he has made a horrible, horrible mistake, and that Sanaya has taken advantage of him. You better probably spin a different story than magic mushrooms made me do it, but something, right? You were not competent to enter into that contract, right? And so that is a key element, right? This is why, for those of you who will get careers at places big enough to have like sexual harassment training, or for college, Caitlin, you're definitely in for this, right? You will every year for each of the 4 years you're at the University of Kansas, you are going to go through a traumatizing sexual harassment in-service training thing, and it's going to tell you over and over and over again that if you have sex with someone who was intoxicated, you have raped them because they are not competent to give consent. Right, now, let's be very careful. I'm using this as a teaching moment. Right? I'm not talking about sex as part of a contract. It's not a prostitution story. I'm just telling you, competence is generally important. And if one party in a sexual encounter is drunk, stoned, or otherwise impaired, they are not competent to give consent. And if the next day they accuse you of rape, the law will be on their side. And if you are at a university, the university does not have to follow all of the due process stuff that is involved in deciding whether or not you go to prison. They will likely expel you from the university and figure out if that was the right decision later. Right? So, be very careful with competence. All right, and I know this is not what you want. Like, you do not want an old guy who, as another student has told me, looks like an Easter egg talking to you about sex and consent. But somebody has to do it, and at this point, I'm too old to really care or get embarrassed about these things. But let's move on, because you guys are not too old to be embarrassed about such things. Oh, yeah, that one. Not impaired or mentally ill. All right, good to go? All right. Now, one element that is relevant to you right now and won't be in a couple of years, and for some of you is not even relevant right now, is the differences for contracts when you are a minor. Okay. And remember, minor just means you're less than 18 years old, so when I call you children, I'm not insulting you in the eyes of the law. You are children if you're not 18. If you are less than 18, most contracts cannot be enforced. Don't get too excited here. This does not mean it's a bonanza for you if you're not 18. Some contracts are enforceable. Things that are considered necessities. can be enforced. So if Caden, you're not 18 yet, or are you 18, Caden? Okay. If Caden orders a pizza, right, and when the delivery person shows up with the pizza, Caden's like, oh, thank you very much. Closes the door. Delivery man knocks again. Caden opens the door, and the guy's like, you're going to need to pay for that. No, I don't. I'm not 18. Contracts are unenforceable on me. No, this one is. Right? If it's for food, it's considered a need. Even if you don't need delivered pizza, that would still be enforceable. Shelter would be another one of those. And again, of course, food. Right? Now, as far as shelter goes, I mean, most places, we'll get to this, are not going to, say, rent an apartment to Caden as a minor. Because most contracts are unenforceable, if you're a minor, in order to enter into a contract, you will need what's called a cosigner.
There's one that says, for example, you cannot order a cheeseburger and expect to renege on the contract.
Yeah, what did I put there? This is what I get for trying to mix up your notes. Actually, I'll put it up on the screen. We'll see what's going on with that, Dakota. Okay, yeah, you cannot order cheeseburger. That's fine. Or pizza. And expect to renege on the contract. Yes, Sky.
Can an 18-year-old be a co-signer?
Yes, but that does not mean that the business or whoever would actually accept you as a cosigner. And I'm not suggesting that the only people who use cosigners are minors. When I bought my first car and needed a car loan, my mother was a cosigner on there because my mother had a history of credit and could get a much better interest rate than I could. So cosigners are good for lots of reasons, but if you're under 18, you will actually need one. Yeah, Caitlin, do you have a question?
With that, so like, say, if me and Abby were to go somewhere, since she's 17, I couldn't sign off on something for her?
You could. And I'm not, so let me preface this by saying this is nothing against Abby. I would say in general, right, and this goes to Sky's question as well, be very careful about being a cosigner because the whole point of a cosigner is they are saying, right, that I promise that I will be responsible for upholding this contract if this young person is not. Right, so again, nothing against Abby. I would be very careful. I'm not a particularly trusting individual. I'll admit that as one of my faults. Or I guess maybe a strength, depending on how somebody wants to see that. But I can think of none of my friends when I was 18 who would have been good candidates for me to co-sign with. Right? We were all making bad decisions. Right? Very much myself included. I did some idiotic stuff. I traded a perfectly good Chevy Blazer for a lemon of a salvage title 3/4 ton diesel Dodge because I thought it was cool. Horrible thing to do. So don't co-sign. Just don't do it. Sky, Caitlin, anybody else, right, who's thinking, don't. Right? Just tell them that you've got bad credit. Tell them, just make up something. They don't have to see your credit score. Lie. I lied to my friends all the time. It's better than telling them no, right? And I assume that all these years later, if I told them that I'd lied to them, they'd be like, I get it. Okay. So the other issue here that can matter is ratification. And this means if for some reason, say, Allison was able to get that loan for, what was it, a white Range Rover with red leather seats? Was that it? All right. And you were somehow able to do this at the age of 17. When you turn 18, that's not like some magical break and no contract from before matters anymore. If after you turn 18, right, you have continued to make payments on that car, your contract with the dealer is still binding. The statement here is just that you have ratified that contract by, as an adult, continuing to uphold it. Your old textbook over there, I love it because it talks about like Bridget goes to the electronics store to buy a boombox stereo for like some ridiculous $250. I mean, that's how old this is. Like, boomboxes have not costed Jeez, sound like I'm a native here, which I am, but I still don't want to sound like it. Right? Boomboxes have not cost $250 for a very long time. But that was the example from your textbook, was that Bridget goes to buy a boombox and needs her mom to co-sign. Right? I think you were also on your way to a Motley Crue concert or something ridiculous like that. All right, moving on. Okay. Oral versus written contracts. Now, this is an important thing in this. I'm giving you the general layout here, but some things can vary from state to state. Okay, oral contracts can be binding. They are what allows an 18-year-old Caden to buy a pizza over the phone. Right? Caden requests a pizza. Right? Papa John's says that they will deliver that pizza in exchange for whatever the price is, and the expectation that is legally enforceable is that when they show up with the pizza, Caden will provide the money. Even though Caden didn't sign anything, didn't read anything, right, he just made a phone call, right? Or maybe even just did it from an app on his phone. These are fine for small amounts. Less than $500 is the general cutoff. And did somebody have a question? Okay. Oh, Dakota.
On like news or ads, like they're saying must be 18 or older to buy.
Yeah.
What's that really?
Well, so some of those depends on what, I mean, if it's a restricted product, then that's the story. But if it's anything that involves credit, that might also be why it's 18. So there's still some stuff like that you wouldn't think about, like some aerosol products that you'd buy at Walmart that they want to card you for. Can't remember, like the last one I bought, I think was like canned air for cleaning keyboards. They're like, you're gonna have to card you for that. Like, what? I mean, it's been a long time. I'm old enough now. I really don't get carded very often. It's kind of sad. All right. Written contracts. Okay. As you might have imagined, for anything over $500, you need a written contract. This does not mean it has to be a really fancy thing. You can still just print, like if you're going to sell a car or a lawnmower or something, you can still just get online and print off a bill of sale, and that will have the elements you need for a contract. If you're going to loan money, and here it doesn't matter the amount, if you're going to loan money, you need a written contract. Right. Otherwise, you should just consider it a gift, right? Which is generally how, I mean, it's another reason I didn't ever lend money, because I wasn't willing to just give money to my friends. I know I sound like a horrible person, but this is all true. I'm just telling you, so maybe you don't judge yourself so harshly, right? Because I knew for most of those people, if I lent them money, I was never going to see it again. Right? Same thing goes later on when you have family members. If they want to borrow money, right, you should just count on not getting it back. Right? But anytime you're going to loan money and expect to get it back, you need a contract. Also, anything to do with purchasing real estate. And we'll talk more about what real property is, but for now, houses, lease on an apartment, land, or if you're going to rent, you need a written contract. And you should be really careful with. There was just a story on NPR this morning. Yeah, that's right. I know I'm just piling things on that I'm like a not nice, grumpy old person. But yes, I was listening to NPR about 6:15 this morning on my way into school, and there was a story about contracts for deeds as a way that you can buy a house, right, without having enough money to go through the down payment and mortgage process with a bank. And what happens, like a lot of young people get kind of snared into these things. They can be okay. Right? Actually, the house I'm currently living in, I started out as a contract for deed, but they were family friends that we'd known for decades, and that's a different story. But in a lot of these, it's just a way, so let's say Claire wants to buy a house, but Claire does not have the money for a down payment, and so Claire enters into a contract for deed. Claire might make some down payment and then makes monthly payments to the person who owns that property. And all of that sounds just like what you do when you buy a house and you involve a bank in a mortgage. The difference is if Claire misses a payment. Let's see, who's going to be our evil slumlord for this? Dakota? Okay, I was going to say, like, your hand was up, and I was like, are you sure you know what you're signing on for? So Dakota is like, oh, Claire, you've missed 1 month, so here is your eviction notice. Please comply with the sheriffs and remove your property from this house. Right? You're done. And that's it. And it doesn't matter. You could have been paying for 15 years. You miss one payment, and you're done. So read these types of contracts very carefully. In some cases, get a lawyer. Also, any contract that involves an obligation for more than a year, you need a contract. A lot of this would be employment contracts. Some of your employment contracts won't be for more than a year. Like my teaching contract is just exactly at a year. But anything that would, like a loan that would be multiple years, would fit there. Of course, that would also be with lending money. If you, let's say, if you contract with somebody for like some kind of property service that's going to stretch out for several years, that would need a contract. Now, in terms of when conflicts or when contracts conflict, the written contract is always the one that will take precedence. It is the stronger contract. It does not matter if you made a verbal agreement with someone first. And you need to know that courts will only very rarely consider any kind of verbal agreement that was reached before a written contract. So if you, and this, I mean, I've got an example of this from buying a car. Right? If you're buying a car and you're doing it the way I told you and you're negotiating over the phone, you're not seeing papers. Right? And even, I'll tell you, even if you go in person, you're not seeing papers. Right? They're just going to talk to you, you're going to agree on a price. You need to make sure that that written thing matches up. So I know when I was dealing with a Kansas City dealership, we got to the end, and the guy's like, yeah, there's just going to be this $395 processing fee. I was like, no, there isn't. He's like, well, there is. It's printed on the contract. I even had to pay it. I was like, well, that's too bad for you. Like, it can be there, but you're going to have to make that $395 go away somewhere else, or I'm not signing this. Right? If I had signed it, I'd be on the hook for that $395 because it does not matter what price we negotiated verbally. All that matters is what's on the paper. Right? And as it turns out, right, they took off $395 somewhere else. I signed the written contract and it was fine. Right? But you should always be careful because most of the time you'll negotiate verbally and then sign something on paper. And tell the dealership, the dealer, the same thing I told my guy. I'm here to buy a car. I'm not here to make a friend. And you don't have to be happy with this. You just have to make it happen. Which is why I say that over the phone. Because as you guys might imagine, I'm not a very imposing figure in person. Thanks, Bridget.
I agree with the person who called you an Easter egg.
Yeah, I know. Especially today. Like, I would not wear this to go do any part of buying a car. Maybe hosting a German game show, maybe. But not buying a thing. So, yeah, I'm not imposing. So that's another reason to do it over the phone. All right. Oh, shoot, we are out of time. Upload your notes. Do the exit slip. The exit slip, I promise, is only a single question. I saw your eyes go wide, Tommy, but it really is just one question.